Benchwarmers, welcome back to the most requested show on the internet, the most pressing show on your podcast feed via the Far End of the Bench podcast with myself, Jimmy Will Lydle, and Nico Bryant. We bring to you Riding the Pine Week 3. Third week of this series that we're doing before March Madness gets going. By the way, speaking of March Madness, we still have the chance. We're less than 7 days away from Selection Sunday. By this Sunday, we'll know the 64 teams in the tournament, so you'll know who to pick your brackets. But when you do pick your brackets, be sure to sign up in our group for the Far End of the Bench. It's pinned right now to our Twitter at FEOTBpod, and it's in the bio of our Instagram, also at FEOTBpod. So be sure to sign up there. You get one bracket winner take all, and the winner will get a $150 Visa gift card. So you'd be stupid. Who couldn't use an extra $150? You'd be stupid not to get in on it and get your hat in the ring, especially if you think you know college basketball. Not to toot my own horn, but when I ran this bracket challenge pick'em as the sports director of my college radio station, yes, I'm that guy right now sitting on his podcast talking about his radio broadcasting, college broadcasting glory days. I was 3 for 3 in college. I won the first. Actually, I did not win the first one last year, and that was a ton of fun. We gave out a free shirt. So if you remember, last year's competition will be pretty much the same setup. We have the new link pinned to our social media, so be sure get in on the action. Don't miss out on that chance at $150. And I mentioned it a couple times. Be sure to follow us at FEOTBpod on all of our social medias. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Far End of the Bench. Right now we're doing this Riding the Pine series, so we're posting those videos throughout the rest of the week on our YouTube channel. But subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave a like, comment on the video. Let us know what you think about some of our takes that we've had and some of our guests. That's a little hint, a little foreshadowing. Guests coming up on Friday. We will have a bonus episode dropping. My former teammate at Western Colorado University, he was the D2 Super Region 4 Defensive Player of the Year, Will Lydle. He's right now training for the CSU Pueblo Pro Day. He will be our special guest interview on Friday. It'll also be on the Top of the Mountain podcast feed, the RMAC podcast that I do during the football season in the falls, which coming up later on in this episode, you guys will hear from Rev, who's actually going to be a part of that show, Top of the Mountain, moving forward this season. All right, I think that's everything that I had to get out of the way initially. My name is Jimmy Will Lydle. Welcome back. It's time for our group therapy, time to rant and rave about what happened in the last week or so of the sporting calendar. I did mention we'll have a little portion with a perpetual guest, a recurring guest on the show. Rev the Problem Coca will be making his long-awaited return. We'll discuss UFC 272, some of the bigger news coming from that event, as well as some other news going on in the world of MMA regarding Cain Velasquez. But you guys will hear that coming up. So that'll be about midway through the episode. We'll go over to that, and then we'll finish up with the Mile High Report. But we'll get into our first topic of the week, and it has, kudos to the NFL. You not only own a day of the week for a majority of the calendar year, you have now, I think, had about 3 weeks since the ending of Super Bowl 56, and there has not been a day that has gone by where NFL news has slowed down at all. And that includes earlier today, Monday, as I'm recording this, and that's when the news broke. Calvin Ridley, star receiver, former Alabama standout for the Crimson Tide under Nick Saban, won the national championship with Tua Tagovailoa on that last-second play to Devonta Smith. He was on that team back at Bama. He has been suspended at least through the 2022 season by the No Fun League. News broke earlier today regarding his suspension, and it is due to a 5-day period in November after he had stepped away from the Atlanta Falcons organization to take care of some of his he said he was battling some mental health issues, so he was going to take some time away for himself and get those figured out. Apparently, if I can keep my tongue in my mouth and my teeth in my head, Calvin Ridley, after he left the team to try and take care of himself, at some point was betting on NFL games, which, if it doesn't seem like a big deal, it's similar to an insider trading situation. Calvin Ridley is coming off of being in the locker room of an NFL franchise 2 weeks before, and he has access to information. When you're a player that's active, or at least not retired fully from the game, you don't bet on NFL football. It's not something it's a faux pas. It's basically damn near illegal, and that's what the NFL is trying to prove to Calvin Ridley in this situation. And I wrote down my notes for the episode today. I have there's going to be a few things that come from Calvin Ridley dealing with this suspension due to his gambling on NFL football games. This is going to open up the floodgates for the hate online on social media. He already showed a little bit of a crack earlier today when he tweeted out the amount that he was betting on and the fact that it wasn't a big deal. It's going to open the floodgates for people to come out of the woodwork and take shots at a guy who already has publicly admitted to having difficulty with dealing with the pressures of being a professional athlete. That's going to be the first thing that's going to happen. Second, this is going to be another good example for fans of the old guard of sports. I know sports gambling has come a long way from the initial thought of actually being able to bet on an NFL, NBA contest. This is going to be a reason as to why this shouldn't be in place. The main issue that the NFL has with what Calvin Ridley did in betting on NFL games is that if he were to bet using insider information, it damages the integrity of the football game to where he knew the outcome and affected the outcome, and it wasn't truly a sports-related incident that happened on the field. That's what the NFL is taking issue with, and Goodell reprimanded Calvin Ridley, and I think that's why we're seeing the ominous threat, as is reported now, that Calvin Ridley is suspended at least through the 2022 season. I was reading an article earlier today, and I saw the fact that he is not eligible for reinstation unless he has the ability under the CBA that he can appeal the suspension. But if he serves his suspension, he is not eligible to petition for reinstation until February of 2023. There's also reports going around earlier today that I was reading. People were calling the Atlanta Falcons, and they were trying to see what the asking price that Arthur Smith would be willing to let Calvin Ridley go. And in a moment of good sportsmanship that kind of softens the blow of a pretty bad moment in sportsmanship, the Atlanta Falcons, knowing that this investigation had been going on through the NFL, knowing that there was going to be hefty reprimandations coming down on Calvin Ridley, they were not entertaining any trade offers. So they didn't lead any team on trying to get more information out of it. At least that's what's being reported. Who knows? Nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors. Alexander Hamilton said it perfectly. Actually, it was Aaron Burr. You want to be in the room where it happened. And unless you were in the room where it happened, I guess we don't really know what happened. But at least as it stands now, the Atlanta Falcons knew this was happening, knew that there was going to be some kind of issue and punishment for Calvin Ridley, which derails what had a promising start to his career. That rookie season, he definitely set a standard for what you would be able to expect from these new breeds of Alabama receivers coming into the NFL. Second season obviously wasn't as great, and then he had to stop. He stopped playing to try and take care of his mental health, which I've been very outspoken on this podcast feed. I know Nico's been very outspoken on this podcast feed. Mental health takes priority over any kind of sporting. It's just a game. You shouldn't be damaging your mental well-being in order to try and play this game no matter what. So I had no issue with him taking time, and I think at the time said that it was a brave thing to take time away at the prime, what could be the prime of your early career in this game, where you're not promised a ton of time to have playing at a high level. You're going to take time away from that period of your life to try and get yourself sorted out, and you just created more stress than you probably are wanting or willing to deal with. at this point. It's going to be a long, hard suspension that Calvin Ridley is going to have to serve, and he's going to have to pay some penance and prove himself back to the NFL that he can be a player that's trustworthy. Because right now he's broken the trust that the league has with all of their players. They pretty much have a handshake agreement with all of their players that they'll play hard, they'll do what they can to get themselves right and get themselves on the field. And when the time comes, when they're finally in that position to be able to play, they're going to play as hard as they can and not do anything to try and damage the integrity of the sport. He's going to have to prove himself back to the NFL that he is going to be that kind of player and stand for the shield and do a little bit of PR cleanup in this situation, because right now it does not look good. People don't have any kind of time for this situation, and I think of a couple examples in some of the other professional leagues. The MLB obviously has Pete Rose, who is one of, if not the greatest hitter that the game has ever seen, he's banned for life and barred from being in the Hall of Fame of that sport. And then you look at the NHL, where you have the Evander Kane situation, and he was never punished, so he continued to do the same things and make the same mistakes. The NFL is going to probably fall somewhere in between those two things, and the one that's coming out the brunt of all this, other than the Atlanta Falcons organization, which who cares? They can make up the loss of a first-round pick from 3 years ago. Now he was already going to be nearing the end of his first contract and start getting expensive. Calvin Ridley is going to be the one that comes out with the brunt end of things, and hopefully you'd like to think that a guy like that can turn it around, who's had a lot of success in the past, but it may just be a lot to handle, and maybe this is the part of the story where we maybe see a bit of a flame out. And it would be a shame, because you would have to then think about what could Calvin Ridley have accomplished if he didn't have this major hurdle to get through early on in his career. And then, that was the lead story of the week, and now we'll get into a little bit of NFL franchise tag and combine talk, because those were two things that were prominent over the weekend as well.